We need people who put work first. That was the subject line in my email. My name's Michael, I'm 39 years old, and I just buried my grandmother on a Tuesday morning in Des Moines. I got back to Kansas City that Wednesday night, planning to be at my desk Thursday morning like nothing happened. Instead, found my badge deactivated and a termination notice waiting in my inbox. 7 years. 7 years. I'd worked for ClearPath Solutions, never missed a deadline, never called in sick, unless I was actually dying. I was the guy they called when the servers crashed at midnight, the guy who trained every new hire in our compliance division, the guy who knew every line of code in our government contract systems. I'd asked Connor Mulligan, my supervisor, for 4 days off, told him my grandmother passed. She was 86, raised me after my parents died in a car wreck. When I was 12, he said, "Fine, but make it quick. We've got the Henderson audit coming up." I went to her funeral, helped my uncle sort through her things, came back ready to work. Now I sat in my truck in the ClearPath parking lot, reading that email over and over. Your recent absence disrupted project flow. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Phone call. No meeting, just a spreadsheet with my final pay calculation attached. I looked up at the third floor windows where I'd spent the last 7 years of my life, where I'd built something, where I thought I mattered. The security guard was already walking toward my truck. I started at ClearPath straight out of community college. Elaine Alvarez, the CEO, hired me herself back then, said she liked that I asked practical questions instead of trying to impress her with technical jargon. I was 22 and grateful for the chance. The company handled data compliance for government contractors, boring work but steady, important when defense companies needed their systems audited. They called us when federal agencies worried about data breaches. They called us. Connor came aboard 3 years ago, middle management type, who measured success in meetings, attended and emails sent. He didn't understand the technical side, but he knew how to make himself look important, always taking credit for other people's work, always finding ways to remind everyone he was in charge. I should have seen the warning signs earlier, like when he started scheduling mandatory team meetings during lunch breaks, or when he began track bathroom times on a spreadsheet, or when he told Rachel from accounting that her sick days were excessive after she had pneumonia. But I kept my head down, did my work, figured if I stayed useful enough, if I made myself indispensable, I'd be fine. The truth was, I made ClearPath a lot of money. Our two biggest clients, Meridian Defense Systems and Harrison Federal Consulting, specifically requested me as their liaison. They didn't trust our automated reports. They wanted human verification, someone who understood their particular needs. These weren't small accounts. Meridian alone was worth annually. Harrison brought in another $6.7 million together. They represented nearly 40% of our revenue, but Connor didn't see it that way. He saw me as someone who got too much attention from the clients, someone who made him look unnecessary. I remember the last conversation we had before my grandma died. He'd called me into his office about the Henderson audit timeline. "I need you to understand something, Michael," he said, not looking up from his computer. "Nobody here is irreplaceable, not even you." I nodded, said I understood, but sitting in that parking lot reading his termination email, realized Connor had been planning this for months. My grandmother's death just gave him the excuse he needed. The security guard tapped on my window. Nice guy named Franklin, who always asked about my weekend. "Sorry, Michael," he said. "When I rolled it down, got orders to escort you out." I handed him my badge. "Not your fault, Franklin. I didn't go home right away. Drove around Kansas City for 2 hours thinking, ended up at the cemetery where my grandmother was buried just 4 days earlier. Sat on the hood of my truck, looking at the fresh dirt on her grave. She would have been furious, not about the firing she's through the depression. New jobs came and went, but about the disrespect, about a man who'd shake your hand on Monday and stab you in the back on Wednesday. You always were too trusting, Michael." I could hear her saying, "Sometimes good people get taken advantage of." My phone buzzed. Text from Ethan, one of the junior analysts I'd been training. "What the hell happened?" Connor just sent an email saying, "You're gone, no explanation." Then another one from Marcus in it, "Heard you got fired. This place is insane." Then Rachel from accounting, "They're saying you abandoned your post." We all know that. It turned my phone off. Didn't want to deal with explanations, but something was bothering me. Something beyond the obvious injustice of it all. During the Henderson audit last month, James Harrison from Harrison Federal had pulled me aside, asked if I was happy at ClearPath, said they'd been thinking of bringing their compliance work in-house, and they'd need someone who really understood their systems. I'd thanked him but said I was loyal to ClearPath, that my job was secure now. I was wondering if Connor knew about that conversation, if he'd decided to get rid of me before I could jump ship. I thought about it, the more pieces started falling into place. Connor's sudden interest in my client relationships, his questions about what the Meridian and Harrison folks discussed with me during our calls, his insistence that all client communication go through him from now on. He wasn't just firing me. He was trying to take over my accounts. Problem was Connor didn't understand how these relationships worked. Meridian's project manager, Colonel Maria Vasquez, was former military. She respected competence and hated corporate politics. Harrison's compliance director, Dr. Linda Wong, was a perfectionist who'd spent 20 years at the FDA. She could spot a fraud from across the room. Neither of them was going to be impressed by Connor's PowerPoint presentations and buzzword vocabulary. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, found the number for Daniel Morrison, a lawyer I'd met at a compliance conference last year. He specialized in wrongful termination cases. Then I put the phone away without calling. I wasn't ready to fight yet, wasn't ready to make this about lawsuits and legal fees, but I was ready to see what happened when ClearPath tried to manage government contracts without the person who actually understood how they worked. Started my truck and drove home for the first time in 7 years. I had nowhere to be tomorrow morning. I spent the first week cleaning my garage, organizing tools, throwing away old paint cans, basically doing anything didn't involve thinking about ClearPath solutions. But by the following Monday, I knew I had to start looking for work. The problem was, ClearPath had non-compete clauses in their employment contracts. I couldn't work for any company that competed with them for 12 months in the compliance world. Basically meant I was locked out of my own industry. I called Daniel Morrison, the lawyer. Michael, right, we met at the Denver conference. His voice was friendly but professional. What can I do for you? I explained the situation, the funeral, the termination, the non-compete. They fired you for attending family funeral. He sounded genuinely surprised. With written permission. I've got the email chain. Good, that's likely wrongful termination, but the non-compete is tricky. Even if we can prove they fired you without cause, enforcing the agreement might still be legal in Missouri. He agreed to review my employment contract, but warned me that litigation could take years. In the meantime, you still can't work in your field. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my bank account. I had maybe 3 months of expenses saved up. After that I'd need to start selling things. My phone rang. Unnumber. Michael, this is Colonel Vasquez from Meridian Defense. Her voice was clipped, military precise. I've been trying to reach you at ClearPath, but they keep transferring me to someone named Connor Mulligan. I felt my stomach drop. Yes ma'am, I'm no longer with the company. I see. Well, that's unfortunate. We specifically requested you for our Q4 compliance review. This Mulligan fellow seems to think he can handle it, but frankly he doesn't inspire confidence. Started our conversation by asking if we could reschedule because he had a dental appointment. I almost laughed but kept professional. I'm sure ClearPath will assign someone qualified to your account, perhaps, but I wanted you to know that Meridian values relationships built on competence and trust. If you land somewhere else, give me a call. She hung up before I could respond. 20 minutes later my phone rang again. Linda Wong from Harrison Federal. Michael, I just heard about your departure from ClearPath. I hope everything is all right. Yes ma'am, just a change in direction. I see. Well, I should mention that we received a rather peculiar call from a Mr. Mulligan this morning. He wanted to schedule what he called relationship reset, needing to discuss our contract terms. Frankly, we're confused. Our contract terms were negotiated specifically around your oversight protocols. My chest tightened. I'm sure he'll get up to speed quickly perhaps, but Michael, you should know that Harrison Federal has always viewed us the primary value proposition in our ClearPath relationship. Without that personal assurance of quality, we may need to reconsider our arrangements. After she hung up, I sat back and realized what was happening. Connor had fired me thinking he could simply slide into my role with these clients. He didn't understand that compliance work wasn't about company policies or org charts. It was about trust, about proving month after month that you understood the stakes. These were defense contractors handling classified information, financial services, Companies dealing with federal regulation didn't care about ClearPath's corporate structure. They cared about results, and Connor Mulligan, with his meeting-heavy approach and buzzword vocabulary, was about to learn that the hard way. I opened my laptop and started updating my resume. Maybe the non-compete would be a problem, but something told me that situation was about to change. 2 weeks after my termination, I got a call from Ethan, the junior analyst. I'd been training Michael. "We need to talk." Not over the phone. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Ethan looked nervous, kept checking over his shoulder. "This place is falling apart," he said quietly. "Ever since you left, everything's going wrong." He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of an email from Colonel Vasquez. "To Connor, dated 3 days ago. We require immediate clarification on the discrepancies found in your preliminary audit report. The error rate appears to be approximately 300% higher than previous reviews conducted under Michael Fulton's oversight." I read it twice. 300%? That's not even the worst part. Ethan leaned closer. "Harrison Federal is threatening to pull their contract entirely. Dr. Wong sent a formal complaint to Elaine about Connor's unprofessional conduct and apparent incompetence." "What did he do?" "Showed up to their quarterly review meeting 20 minutes late, hadn't read their file, and kept calling Dr. Wong Linda, even after she corrected him twice. Then he suggested they might want to streamline their compliance requirements to reduce costs." Winced. Linda Wong had spent her career in federal regulatory work. Suggesting she compromised compliance standards was like telling a priest to skip communion. "There's more," Ethan continued. "Connor's been telling everyone that you were planning to quit anyway. Says you were talking to competitors trying to steal clients." "That's not true." "I know, but he's been going through your old emails looking for evidence. Found that conversation you had with James Harrison about potential opportunities." The pieces clicked into place. Connor hadn't just fired me impulsively. He'd been building a narrative prepared to discredit me if the client started asking questions. "What's Elaine saying about all this?" Ethan shook his head. "Nobody knows. She's been in meetings with the legal team all week. Word is that Meridian and Harrison are both threatening to terminate their contracts unless ClearPath can guarantee the same level of service they had before." He slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is Connor's new org chart. He's promoted himself to Director of Client Relations, gave himself a 15% raise." I looked at the document. My old position was listed as eliminated due to restructuring. "Ethan, I need you to do something for me, but only if you're comfortable with it." He nodded. "Next time Dr. Wong or Colonel Vasquez calls with a technical question, don't transfer them to Connor immediately. Let them know that the company is experiencing a transition period and ask if they'd like their concerns documented or writing." "Why?" "Because when this all falls apart, ClearPath is going to need a paper trail showing that the client specifically requested qualified oversight. It's the only way the company survives this." Ethan agreed, but I could see he was worried about his own job security. After he left, I sat in a coffee shop thinking about Connor's 15% raise, about his promotion to a position that didn't exist when I worked there, about the clients whose concerns he was ignoring while he restructured himself into a corner office. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel Morrison. "Daniel, it's Michael Fulton. I think we need to move faster on that wrongful termination case." "What's changed?" "I think my former employer is about to lose 40% of their revenue. When they do, they're going to realize they need me back, and you want to be in a position to negotiate." "Exactly." Daniel Morrison moved fast. Within a week, ClearPath received a formal letter outlining the wrongful termination claim and demanding my immediate reinstatement with back pay. But I wasn't waiting for their response. I'd spent 7 years learning everything about Meridian Defense and Harrison Federal. I knew their compliance schedules, reporting requirements, their internal politics. More importantly, I knew their pain points. Meridian was expanding into cybersecurity consulting. They needed someone who understood both defense contracting regulations and emerging federal data protection standards. Harrison was dealing with new pharmaceutical tracking requirements that overlapped with their existing financial compliance protocols. Both companies had problems that ClearPath couldn't solve because Connor Mulligan didn't understand the technical complexity involved. So I started making calls first to Colonel Vasquez. "Wanted to follow up on our conversation about my departure from ClearPath. Michael, good to hear from you. I hope you're calling with better news about your employment situation. Actually, I'm calling to ask if you'd be interested in a consulting arrangement, independent contractor work focused specifically on your cybersecurity compliance transition." There was a pause. "That would depend on your availability and your former employer's non-compete restrictions."
I've got legal counsel working on the non-compete issue, but in the meantime I could provide advisory services that don't compete with ClearPath's core business, such as cybersecurity compliances outside their wheelhouse. It's a specialized field that requires dedicated expertise. Interesting. Send me a proposal next. Call went to Dr. Wong. Same approach, different angle. Harrison Federal needed help navigating the pharmaceutical tracking requirements, which were technically outside ClearPath's data compliance specialty. Michael, I'll be frank with you, we're extremely dissatisfied with ClearPath's current service level. If you can provide the specialized assistance we need, we'd be very interested in discussing terms within 3 days. I had signed consulting agreements with both companies. The work was technically outside ClearPath's business scope, so the non-compete clauses didn't apply, but practically speaking, I was providing exactly the kind of high-level oversight that Connor had lost when he fired me. Timing couldn't have been better. On Thursday morning, Ethan called me in a panic. Michael, Elaine wants to see you today. She called asking for your phone number. Did she say? Why no, but Connor got escorted out of the building an hour ago. Security took his badge and everything. My phone rang before I could explain further. Blocked number. Michael, this is Elaine Alvarez. We need to talk urgently. Her voice was tight, stressed. I'd never heard her sound anything but completely in control. Of course, when would be convenient now? Can you come to the office? I'll meet you in the parking lot so you don't have to deal with reception. I drove to ClearPath wondering what had changed. When I pulled into the parking lot, Elaine was standing beside her car looking older than I remembered. Michael, I owe you an apology and probably a lot more than that. She handed me a folder. Meridian and Harrison both subcontract termination letters this morning, effective in 30 days, unless we can guarantee restoration of previous service levels. I opened the folder. The letters were identical in tone, professional, final, and devastating. We also received copies of the consulting agreements you signed with both companies. Very clever, staying outside our non-compete restrictions. Michael, I don't apologize. You did exactly what I would have done. She looked tired. The question now is whether we can fix this mess before it destroys the company. Elaine and I talked for 2 hours in her office. She'd spent the morning reviewing everything. Connor's emails, the client complaints, the audit reports that had been coming back with increasing error rates since my departure. I trusted him to handle the transition, she said, shaking her head. I was focused on the Henderson merger talks and assumed he could manage our existing accounts. What changed your mind? Dr. Wong called me directly yesterday, said Harrison Federal has never experienced such unprofessional service in 30 years of government contracting. Then Colonel Vasquez sent a formal complaint through military procurement channels. She pulled out a printed email this morning. Got a call from Henderson Industries. They're reconsidering the merger because our client retention numbers don't match what Connor reported. I read the email. Henderson had discovered that ClearPath was about to lose $14.7 million in annual revenue, nearly 40% of our total contracts. Connor told you, quit to join a competitor, said the client losses were inevitable because you'd been stealing accounts. That's not true. I know, I saw the termination paperwork he filed. Attendance violation for attending your grandmother's funeral. She looked directly at me. Michael, I'm offering you transposition director of client relations, 20% salary increase and full authority over compliance operations. What about the consulting agreements I signed? Keep them, consider them part of your new responsibilities. Meridian and Harrison trust you, not the company. If bringing you back can save those contracts, that's what matters. I thought about my grandmother, about 7 years of loyalty repaid with a termination email about Connor's 15% raise, and his org chart eliminating my position. I want a written guarantee that family emergencies won't be held against employees, and I want oversight of hiring decisions in compliance division done, and I want Ethan promoted to senior analyst. He's earned it. Elaine nodded. Anything else? Just one thing. I want Connor's termination to be handled the same way mine was. No meeting, no discussion, just an email with his final pay calculation. She almost smiled. I can arrange that. Started back at ClearPath the following Monday. Same desk, same computer, but everything felt different. I wasn't the guy trying to stay useful anymore. I was the guy who'd proven what happened when competence got replaced with politics. My first call was to Colonel Vasquez. Ma'am, this is Michael Full from ClearPath Solutions. I understand you have some concerns about your contract. Michael, I thought you left the company temporary assignment. I'm back now as Director of Client Relations. If you're willing to give us another chance, I'd like to personally guarantee that your account receives attention it deserves. Well, that changes things considerably. Dr. Wong was equally relieved. Michael, we were prepared to terminate our relationship with ClearPath entirely. Having you back makes all the difference. Both contracts were renewed that week. Connor's termination email went out Tuesday morning. Same subject line he'd used for me. Termination notice, performance issues. His badge was deactivated before he saw the message. The merger with Henderson Industries went through 3 months later. Elaine credited our improved client retention numbers as a deciding factor. Ethan got his promotion and handling the technical side of our new cybersecurity division. Rachel from accounting is our new HR coordinator, making sure family emergencies are treated with the respect they deserve. I keep a photo of my grandmother on my desk now, not because I need the reminder, but because I want everyone to know that some things matter more than quarterly reports. Sometimes the people who think they can replace you end up proving exactly why they can't.